Ah, true crime. Whether you're here because you have a strange liking for the morbid, because you got a notification from your favorite YouTuber, yours truly, or because you realize that your deep-rooted psychological traumas leave you in a natural state of distrusting that you feel will inevitably push away all of those you love, including the person you've grown extremely emotionally dependent upon. You're here. So, thanks for that. Without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of the introduction stuff. There's like 10 plus hours or so of true crime content in a playlist that covers everything before. Can I zoom out? There we go. Right here. All of this. So if you like true crime and you're new, go ahead and click the up here part. Now, buckle your fuckles. Get comfortable. Because we're covering the first half of level 11 of the Ultimate True Crime and Unsolved Killings Iceberg. Milwaukee Police Department bombing. Bombs. We love that here. The Milwaukee Police Department bombing was a November 24th, 1917, so old bomb attack that killed 9 members of local 9 law enforcement and a civilian in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, United States. This was the entirety of the Wisconsin police force and was crippling to the state. But I digress. The perpetrators were never caught, but are suspected to be an anarchist terrorist cell operating in the States in the early 20th century. The target was initially an evangelical church in the Third Ward and only killed the police officers when the bomb was taken to police station by a concerned civilian. Well, that's interesting. I have an explosive device. What should I do?
Take it to the cops. It's their problem now.
The bombing remained the most fatal single event in national law enforcement history for over 80 years until the 9/11 attacks. This is because cops never had to be union busters. The bomb itself was a large black powder bomb wrapped as a package and was discovered by Maud L. Richter, a social worker next to an evangelical church in the Third Ward. She dragged the package into the church basement and notified the church janitor, Sam Mazzone. Mazzone took the bomb to the Central Police Station at Oneida and Broadway and turned it over to the Fed. The station keeper was showing it to the shift commander, Lieutenant Flood, right before a scheduled inspection when, it went off. 9 members of the department were killed in the blast alongside a female civilian. Why a church, of all places? Like, I get it. A lot of churchgoers use Jesus Christ as an excuse to be bigoted and stupid. But why bomb them? That doesn't do anything. Except cause violence. It was suspected that at the time that the bomb had been placed outside the church by anarchists, particularly the Galileanist faction led by adherents of Luigi Galeni. At the time, the bomber's identity was not uncovered. Many years later, interviews with surviving Galenist members revealed that a Croatian national, Mario Buda, chief bomb maker for the Galileanists, may have constructed the Milwaukee bomb. May have? If he's the chief bomb maker, he probably did. At the time, the bombing was the most fatal single event, we've already mentioned this, and it was only surpassed by the 9/11 attacks. Nice. Those responsible for the 1917 bombing were never apprehended, but days later, 11 alleged Italian anarchists went to trial on unrelated charges involving a fracas that had occurred 2 months before. The specter of the larger, uncharged crime of the bombing haunted the proceedings and assured the convictions of all 11. In 1918, Clarence Darrow led an appeal that gained freedom for most of the convicted, though. So, nice stuff. Great start. Fantastic. Bigfoot Killer. Let's see how many Bigfoot jokes I can make with this one. Does it not exist and instead have dozens of National Geographic shows about it? The Bigfoot Killer is a name given to an unidentified American serial killer who, raped and murdered several girls and women in Detroit between February and October of 1975. All of the victims were engaged in prostitution and in poverty, with their killings taking place in the Cass Corridor neighborhood. Always the prostitutes. Come on, man, get original with it. The perpetrator chose young girls aged 16 to 22 who prostituted themselves on the streets as victims. This is because the police don't care about them. In early 1975, he committed at least 4 rapes, with his victims going to the police and describing his appearance, from which a facial composite was created. Between February 16th and October 20th, the offender killed a total of 7 women, 5 black and 2 white. During the investigation, witnesses reported that the killer had driven a beige Oldsmobile, and after offering $15 in exchange for sexual services, he lured the victims to his car. Jesus, $15? That's fucking cheap. What the fuck? After which he threatened them with the knife, beat, raped, sodomized, and finally strangled them. He was described as a muscular, tall African American with facial hair and an afro, likely between the ages of 30 and 35. According to the police, he may have suffered from acromegaly. Hey, I said that right. That's a first. Since, according to testimonies and other evidence, he had large hands and feet. As a result of this, he was nicknamed Bigfoot. What fucking cop? Who the fuck was responsible for that? Chief, this guy, he's killed 7 people in the last 48 hours.
He's got big feet. Let's call him Bigfoot.
The fuck? After this information was revealed to the public at the end of 1975, a number of NGO activists and several hundred residents of the Cass Corridor organized in a rally in front of the police station, accusing the authorities of negligence. Wow, who would have ever thought that the cops' negligence would make crimes go unsolved? Who would have ever fucking guessed? This definitely isn't a dead horse that I've been beating for the last 12 episodes of the True Crime series. Now, this crowd appealed to the city's administrative bodies, demanding an investigation and subsequent punishment of officials because they refused to disclose information about the ongoing killings and were unable to take proper precautions. To back up their claims, protesters showed a police leaflet describing the killer's appearance, which included a telephone number for communication but was unavailable at night. Representatives of law enforcement denied these allegations, claiming that enough was being done. Great job, cops. Leave it to the police to pat themselves on the back. During the investigation, a black Detroit native, 29-year-old Carl Mayweather Jr., was arrested on January 27, 1976. With a name like Mayweather, violence must be in his genetics. This is a boxing joke. I know nothing about boxing. Now, this guy was arrested during an attempted rape of a woman in River Rouge and subsequently considered a prime suspect. Mayweather came from a rich family and held a leadership position in a small company owned by his father, but it was revealed that he had previously been prosecuted on charges of assaulting a woman for which he had been given a suspended sentence. Since he was tall, athletic, wore size 47 shoes, and is that fucking European or American? What the hell? Physically matched the killer's description, he was charged. Well, there's nothing on the Wikipedia article beyond that. Wow. But after all this mess, he was charged with rape and robbery in February 1976. Authorities looked into the possibility that he was a Bigfoot killer. However, over the following months, it was established Mayweather had a solid alibi for at least 4 of the murders, and thus no charges were brought against him, eliminating him as a suspect. The Bigfoot killer was never captured and remains unidentified to this day. Surprise, surprise, who would have ever guessed that it remains unsolved if it's on the ultimate unsolved true crime iceberg? Paraquat murders. As you can see by this lengthy Wikipedia article, we've really got a lot to work with here. The Paraquat murders were a series of indiscriminate poisonings carried out in Japan in 1985. Police were unable to gather any evidence about the murders other than they were caused by poisoned beverages that were left inside or around vending machines. All the beverages were poisoned with the herbicide paraquat, except for one which was poisoned with diquat and then placed in or near the vending machine, where the victim would then have a nice drink. The first poisoning and death occurred April 30th in Fukuyama, Hiroshima, and this drink was found on top of the vending machine. After this, 11 more murders occurred between September 11th, which, as we all know, is a fucking cursed day. Nothing good happens except for my cousin's birthday on that day, and November 17th. Most of these drinks were retrieved from outside the vending machine. Vending machine operators posted warnings on machines telling people not to drink drinks found. Yawn. Nice. Really love to see it. Found in or around the machines, after which poisoning stopped. It was established that at least one other unknown person attempted to imitate the murders by putting lime sulfur into drinks in Tokyo. And there were also a small number of people who attempted to poison themselves in a method imitating the murders, but ultimately nothing came of it. Edgecombe's County Serial Killer. The Edgecombe County Serial Killer is an unidentified serial killer in the surroundings of Edgecombe and Halifax counties in North Carolina. This is, of course, in the United States, because where the fuck else is there North Carolina? Maybe it's by Eastern European Georgia. I don't know. There are 10 suspected victims, all African American women, and the remains of 8 have been recovered. Because some of the victims had been found near the Seven Bridges Road in Rocky Mount, the culprit has also been called the Seven Bridges Killer. All the victims were black, engaged in prostitution, Jesus fucking Christ, and had problems with drug addiction.
Police officers, please, I'm begging you. I'm literally begging you. Just care a little bit. Come on, Mitt.
The first victim of the killer was a Rocky Mount woman. 29-year-old Melody Wiggins was reported missing on May 30th, 2005. Side note, naming your child Melody is a surefire way to ensure that they probably don't have the best luck. I have never once met a Melody who has ever had good luck. And I've known quite a few Melodies. Might also just be the crippling poverty that I've known. Anyway, now, of course, she was reported missing May 30th, 2005, and her partially stripped body was found on June 2nd in rural Edgecombe County. Following a forensic autopsy, it was established that the woman had received several knife wounds and blows from a blunt object to the head, which proved to be fatal. Because, those things tend to kill you. On January 16th, 2007, relatives of 43-year-old Christine Mary Boone contacted the police to report her as missing. The initial search proved unsuccessful until her skeletonized remains were found on March 9th, 2010. Her corpse wasn't found until the recession ended. On the afternoon of June 17th, 46-year-old Joyce Reen Durham was seen for the last time in Rocky Mount. To this day, she hasn't been located. Surely she's in the same place God has locked my happiness. The infinite void that we will never know. In February 2008, 50-year-old Ernestine Battle went missing. Her skeletonized remains were found March 14th by a farmer near the Seven Bridges Road. Since the body was in a state of severe decomposition, the medical examiner was unable to establish a cause of death. Wow, who would have ever guessed? A year later, on February 5th, 2009, 36-year-old Yolanda Reen Lancaster was also reported as missing. In January 2011, her remains were found in a wooded area off of, you're never gonna fucking believe this, the Seven Bridges Road by a group of hunters. About a week later, the body of 33-year-old Elizabeth Jane Smallwood was found on a soccer field in Rocky Mount. During the investigation, it was established she didn't maintain contact with the relatives, due to which her exact date of disappearance is unclear. Based on the state of her body, it was determined she had been killed approximately 6 months before the body was found. On February 22nd, 28-year-old Taraha Sinise Nicholson was reported missing, with her body later found on March 7th near the Seven Bridges Road. After an autopsy, it was concluded she had been strangled to death. On April 25th, relatives of 31-year-old prostitute Janice Latonia Hargrove contacted the police to, you're never going to believe this, report her disappearance. The initial search proved fruitless until her remains were discovered on June 29th in a wooded area a few yards away from, you're never going to fucking believe it, the Seven Bridges Road. On March 27, 2010, a man riding an ATV found the body of Roberta Williams by the side of the Seven Bridges Road. While investigating her killing, her relatives claimed that they had filed a statement with the authorities about Roberta's vanishing, which was subsequently denied by the law enforcement, which makes no fucking sense. Police officer, please help me. My family member, they're missing.
No. No, they're not. They're not. Not my fucking issue, asshole.
How would that conversation go? While examining the murders, traces of sperm were found on Nicholson's body. Oh, which, according to the investigators, led to her killer. After a DNA examination, the biological traces were linked to 31-year-old Antoine Pittman, a convicted felony residing in Rocky Mount at the beginning of September 2009. He was charged with Taraha Nicholson's murder. Pittman was born July 15th, 1978, in Rocky Mount. You're never gonna guess where that's fucking near. You're never gonna fucking believe it. It's near the
Seven Bridges Road.
Jesus Christ. And he was raised by a single mother. During his school years, he began to engage in criminal activities because the laws are there to test how much of a bitch you are. And in 1994, which is a year that you could buy a GTR in Japan, the cool GTR, the Skyline GTR, he was arrested on charges of attempting to rape a 2-year-old child. Jesus fuck. As part of a plea deal, he pleaded guilty to indecent behavior and in that July was released on probation. During the probationary period, he was obliged to spend 90 days in rehabilitation institution for juvenile offenders, but was quickly expelled a month after following a fight, after which he was placed under house arrest. In January 1996, still a year you could buy a cool Skyline GTR if you were anywhere but America, after committing several offenses, Pittman was arrested for violating his parole, after which he was again sent to juvie, where he remained until mid-1997, which, you know what's way cooler than this asshole? A Nissan Skyline GTR. Any of them. The R32, the R33, R34. I would much rather be reading about those than some guy who rapes kids. Let's kill this guy. I think that's okay. I think that's cool. I'm actively advocating for violence now. Is it a joke? Is it not? You'll never know. Is it terms of service? Hopefully not. Where was I in this article? In subsequent years, he would be charged with theft, assault, resisting arrest, and giving alcohol to minors because, really? That he got arrested for that? All the other shit, and the cops were like, you were giving booze to kids. How are you that fucking stupid? Jesus. In 2003, the year I was born, Antoine served 45 days in a county jail for hiding the fact he was a registered sex offender. Ooh. In the state while applying for a job. During this time, a blood sample was taken from him, and in 2004, he was convicted of drunk driving, for which he spent another few weeks in jail. This guy must really like jail. In 2007, he was arrested for assaulting a prostitute in the same area where the other victims had been killed. This guy's really fucking stupid. In spring of 2009, Pittman was once again arrested for driving under the influence, but was released after his bail was paid. What was his bail? Nickels? After failing to appear in court for his trial, he was listed as a fugitive and therefore arrested in Nash County in August. He was lodged in the county jail yet again, where he would be charged with Nicholson's murder due to circumstantial evidence. Investigators began to suspect Pittman might be responsible for, all the other fucking killings in the Seven Bridges Road area, and it turned out that he had often visited this same area since he was a teenager and had lived for several years at his grandparents' home in Whitakers, which was located only a few miles away from where Nicholson, Williams, Thorpe, Battle, and Hargrove's bodies were later to be found. Prior to his arrest, he had lived in Rocky Mount for 6 years, including in a one-story brick building on the outskirts of town, which is, you're never gonna fucking believe this, not far from Seven Bridges Road. Can we stop talking about Seven Bridges Road already? In 2005, he briefly lived in a house located near the soccer field where Smallwood's body would later be found. In 2006, Pittman lived for several weeks in a trailer in Scotland Neck. Who the fuck decided on that name? Where in March 2010, Christine Boone's corpse would be found in a wooded area not far from the trailer. In addition, Antoine was detained by traffic police at Seven Bridges on a road the same day that another victim, Hargrove, mysteriously disappeared. He was found unconscious in his car with his pants lowered, after which he was awakened and interrogated, and later charged with drunk driving. 2 months later, Hargrove's body would be found in a field 180 yards away. It seems pretty fucking clear-cut, doesn't it? At his trial, Antoine was forced to admit that he knew Tahara, which is bad news for him. According to him, 6 days before her body was discovered, he put her in his car and paid her for sexual services. This is, of course, very lucrative in places where people are naturally born Amish and neckbeards. After they had sex, he dropped the girl off near the library in downtown Rocky Mount and supposedly never saw her again. You know who really never saw her again?
Her family.
In September 2011, Antoine Pittman was found guilty of Tahara Nicholson's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Despite the fact he was never charged with the other murders, the media and police have identified him as responsible because if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it flies like a duck, it eats like a duck, it swims like a duck, you know what it might be? A goose. Just fucking with you. Nope, it's a duck. He did it. There's also, of course, a motorcycle ride that was held in contribution to the murdered women, but besides that, there's not much more information here, so to the next entry we go. Monster of Udine. A monster of Udine, Italian Monstro di Udine. Sometimes I forget Italian is actually a thing. Sometimes I forget Italy is real. Anyway, Monster of the Udine was an unidentified serial killer who killed at least 4 victims in the province of Udine in northeastern Italy between the years of 1971 and 1989. March 2019, following the discovery of some evidence which had never been analyzed before, a plaintiff lawyer requested the reopening of the cold case, proving that said lawyer definitely has a god complex. The official number of murders attributed to Monstro di Udine is 4, although there may have been more. Up to 16. Squaring that. The 4 victims were found with a gaping incision in their abdomen, cut and cleaned with extreme care, most likely with a scalpel or something similar. The incision of the cut was very close to that of a cesarean, which is a C-section, because, hey, how do you get ready to get rid of a baby?
Practice on innocent people who aren't pregnant, or maybe are.
Which convinced the police the killer was a doctor. However, the police have never had any real leads in the case. Wow, this sounds like a fucking Criminal Minds episode I watched with my partner the other day. The following 4 women are confirmed as victims of the monster of Italy, of Udine. Maria Carla Bellone, 19, sex worker. Oh boy. Killed 19th of February, 1980. Luana Giampocaro, 22, sex worker, killed 24th of January, 1983. Aurelia Januszewicz, 42, sex worker, killed on 3rd of March, 1985. And Marina Lipre, 40, primary school teacher, prostitute on the side, because if you can't teach those kids math, you can definitely jack off their dads. Killed on 26th of February, 1989. Nice. Investigators also believe the following women to be victims of the monster of Udine, but have been unable to confirm with absolute certainty that this guy did it. Irene Belletti, stabbed multiple times in various places, doesn't fit the MO. Elsa Moruzzi, strangled, doesn't fit the MO. Eugenia Tilling, stabbed in the throat. That's just weird. Maria Luisi Bernardo, stabbed in various places, doesn't fit the MO. Jacqueline Brechtbuller, doesn't fit the MO. Will McGinn, found burned in a landfill. Jesus Christ, that's a new one. You know, there's lots of ways to die, but being burned to death in trash is particularly shitty. Maria Bokovaz, also strangled. Matilda Zanet, cause of death not even listed. Stojanka Jazmovic was Polish. Nikla Parabo, strangled. Now, these crimes, of course, vary from 1971 to 1991, but, the Wikipedia article agrees with me here. Considering the difference in modus operandi, there was probably more than one murder active in the same area at the same time. In 2019, the Carabinieri, Forensic Science Department, RAS, in Parma, were asked to analyze the new evidence and ascertain whether those crimes could be attributed to one or more serial murderers. What did they respond with? We don't fucking know. Ann Arbor Hospital murders. Going from police bombings to hospital killings. Fun. The Ann Arbor Hospital murders were the murders of 10 patients by unauthorized administration in their IV of a career drug, Pavlon, in the Ann Arbor, Michigan Veterans Administration Hospital during 1975. Following a vast FBI investigation into the deaths, nurse Filipino Narcisco? I'm sorry, that doesn't look like a real name. That looks like something auto-generated for a video game NPC. What? And Lenora Perez were charged with murder, but only found guilty on poisoning and conspiracy charges because, hey, you planned to do this. You put the poison in. Not really your fault they died, though. Shouldn't have been a bitch, I guess. Public opinion was against the prosecution of the nurses on the basis that they could have only had the most. What? That they could have had only the most trivial of possible motives for conspiring to commit such extremely serious crimes. The case was dropped after retrial was ordered. Huh. During a few months in 1975, patients at the VA hospital in Ann Arbor began suffering respiratory failure and sometimes dying with extraordinary frequency. In a single 20-minute period on one day in the middle of August, 3 patients required emergency treatment to save their lives, and the chief of anesthesiology, finding they had responded to an antidote for a paralyzing drug, called the FBI, which is the right move. Investigators found that nurse Filipino Narciso had been on duty in the relevant ward during every poisoning. She was identified by a patient as a nurse who injected something into his IV before his breathing suddenly stopped. Seems pretty clear cut. Nurse Lenora Perez was also identified by another patient as having injected his IV just before respiratory arrest occurred, but he, like the patient who identified Narciso, had died before the trial. Great. The case against Narciso and Perez was considered by Assistant U.S. Attorney General Richard DeLoynes to be highly circumstantial.
Literally how?
Although the defense lawyers felt it was strong enough that they had to put their clients to the stand where they appeared evasive, there was only one charge of murder considered by the jury, with the other charges just being poisoning. Both defendants were recent immigrants to the United States, and the trial was marred by accusations of racism. I'm going to go ahead and stop this right here. Their race doesn't really matter. You know, if you've got patients who are like suddenly fucking dying a lot, and it's a little bit weird, especially when your job is to
Keep them alive.
you might run into some problems if your patients are like, yeah, that nurse is poisoning me. I think mob justice might have kind of fucked up here. I don't know. Maybe I've made my decision too soon, but it seems just sus. One man, originally slated to be the lead witness for the prosecution, referred to Perez and Narciso as, oh, okay, I see where the racism claims come from. He referred to them as slant-eyed bitches. You fucking idiot. And asserted there was a nationwide conspiracy of Filipino nurses to murder veterans. Because, yeah, the Philippines really hates America. Filipino people hate Americans. Even more than the French. What? Racial tensions at the time were also running high due to the rates of immigration to the U.S. by U.S. immigrants. This is stupid. Fact, if you're racist, you're a fucking idiot. You know, it's part of your monkey brain to be racist. But are you a fucking monkey? Are you in the trees? No. So there's no need for tribalism. There's no need for racism. It's really fucking stupid that some people are just so impossibly idiotic that they let something as stupid as that affect their judgment. Does it seem pretty clear cut that these nurses probably did something? Yeah, it seems definitely too suspicious to not investigate. Does it have any fucking thing to do with their skin tone? It shouldn't. Now, of course, let's get back to reading. The two defendants were primary, though not always the only, nurses on duty during the poisonings. The prosecution emphasized with the regular proximity of the defendants to poisoned patients. Crucial evidence came from a relative of the victims who testified one of the defendants was in the room doing something to the bedside equipment just before he suddenly stopped breathing. The significance of evidence that the defendants had been in the room shortly before was that the injections of Pavilon, according to the prosecution's experts, must have been administered only minutes before the victim suffered paralysis and cessation of breathing. Narciso and Perez were acquitted of the murder charge, but both nurses were found guilty of 3 counts of poisoning, which doesn't make sense. If you're going to give them the poisoning, might as well give them the murder, and conspiracy to poison patients, which seems a little hard to prove. Pacifico Marcos, the president of the Philippine Medical Association and the younger brother of Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos, headed a defense fund and called the verdict a miscarriage of justice. Yeah, we really can't trust the American courts for fucking shit here, can we? In February of the following year, a judge set aside the guilty verdicts, ruling the jury, which had deliberated for 15 days and acquitted on the only remaining murder charge and some of the poisoning charges may have been influenced by what amounted to prejudicial presentation of the prosecution case during the trial, which isn't entirely an unreasonable claim to make. The new attorney general decided to mount another prosecution, reportedly because the American public were not behind the prosecution of the nurses, and the defendants were unlikely to make the mistake of exposing themselves to cross examination again. Narciso and Perez had suffered as a result of their lengthy trial process because that shit expensive. The prosecution of the two for the murders became a focal point for many protest groups and Filipinos who united in their condemnation of the handling of the case and expressed support for the two nurses. Again, final thoughts here. Seems a little weird. Definitely should be investigated. Keep race out of it. There's nothing wrong with investigation. It should be done. But the instant your investigation is influenced by skin tone, you shouldn't be on the job. The instant your court case is influenced by skin tone, whoever suggested that stupid ass idea shouldn't be in the fucking room. So I can't exactly disagree with the appeal, but I do think that this case should have been handled better because, hey,
Nurses killing patients is kind of a fucking problem.
Flat tire murders. Flat tire murders were a series of unsolved murders. Who would have ever fucking guessed? In Broward and the Miami-Dade counties in Florida. Nothing good happens in Florida, except for the import of the R32, R33, and our soon-to-be R34 Nissan GTR and GTS Skylines, one of which I will be buying soon, whether or not it's with money I earned from YouTube or by robbing banks. Now, these crimes occurred between February 1975 and January 1976. The name originated from the investigators' belief that, when the offender committed 2 of the crimes, he had deflated the tires of the victims' cars. The list of suspected victims ultimately included 12 girls and women whose bodies were discovered in or near South Florida canals. Some forensic experts have questioned whether a single offender was responsible for all the murders, while others have proclaimed that the murder might have killed more than 30 women in multiple states. The murders were the subject of a 2021 book, The Flat Tire Murders: Unsolved Crimes of a South Florida Serial Killer. Well, that author should be informed that everyone in Florida is a serial killer. Now, the first murder victim of the flat tire murder was 27-year-old respiratory therapist Ronnie Sue Gorlin, who went missing July 22nd, 1975, after leaving her Miami Beach apartment to visit her mother in Parkway Hospital. The next day, her naked body was found in the Graham Canal with signs that she had been sexually assaulted and stabbed to death. Her car, a rented burgundy white Oldsmobile Cutlass, was found in a shopping center parking lot with a slashed tire. 8 days later, 21-year-old Elise Rapp, originally from New York City, left her apartment to go shopping. She was last seen at a Hollywood mall in the evening before vanishing. Her car, a rented yellow Chevrolet Vega, Chevy, disgusting, was found in the mall's parking lot, also with a deflated tire. The day after, her body was found in the same canal where Gorlin's body was found earlier. Both women shared the characteristics of being found naked except for their necklace with the Hebrew inscription for life around Rapp's neck and a single sandal on Gorland's foot. Following a forensic autopsy, it was determined that Rapp's cause of death was drowning, but she had also been sexually assaulted prior to her death. In both these cases, the killer had chosen young women who traveled in cars by themselves. In their absence, he had deflated their vehicle's tires, after which he waited for them to return and then offered to fix their tires, presenting himself as a good Samaritan. After the discovery of these bodies, police first suggested there was a serial killer active in 2 counties. According to them, a total of 12 young women killed in South Florida might have been the victims of the same offender. The first of them. I am fighting for my life to not yawn, and I failed 3 times as I record this video. The first of them was 20-year-old Judith Ann Osterling from Indiana, who went missing on February 1st, 1975 from Miami-Dade County after returning home from her job at a massage parlor. 2 days later, her body was found in the canal bordering Broward and Miami-Dade. A few days after that, not far from where Osterling was found, the body of 17-year-old divorcee... I'm sorry, what? 17-year-old what? Divorcee?
What?
Was found in the canal. Barbara Davis Steffens, 21, the daughter of the president of Anchor Electric Co., went missing on February 12th after she said she would travel to Coral Gables to visit a friend. Her car, a cream olive silver 1973 Chevy Camaro, ooh, nice, was later found in a parking lot near the center of Miami, with her body later found on February 20th in a wooded lot, not in a canal. Sus. From May 1975 onwards, 4 other young women were found in canals of Broward County. 19-year-old Nancy Fox from West Palm Beach gone missing after going to a laundry. That's weird article formatting, but alright. In late May, and was later found in Fort Lauderdale. Apparently beaten to death with a blunt object. Barbara Susan Schreiber and Belinda Darlene Zittauer, both 14 from Hollywood, were last seen going out on June 18th. Their bodies were found 2 days later on the bank of a canal, shot to death, but no signs of rape. Again, a break from MO. The final victim, 14-year-old Robin Leslie Lutch, was found on July 11th in a canal about half a mile from where Schreiber and Zittauer's bodies were found. Unlike other victims, she was fully clothed. The suspected perpetrator was described as a white male, so 90% of Florida, aged 20 to 25, so 85% of Florida, well-dressed, well, that narrows it down a lot, that's about 20% of Florida, physically athletic and attractive, possibly married, and very intelligent with an above-average IQ, and a sexual sadist, so that's like 5% of Florida. Never mind, I talked too much shit. Using his charm, he won the trust of potential victims, which he would lure to his car. A reward of $1,000, which was like a lot of money in the 70s, was announced for any information that would lead to his capture. You're never going to believe what police never got. According to Sergeant Edwin Karstad of Sonoma County, California, the flat tire murder was possibly responsible for upwards of 30 murders across several states since the early 1970s. Starting in California, after these killings abruptly ceased in December of 1973, 9 similar murders were recorded in Washington the following year, but stopped in September. After that, another spate of killings in which the perpetrator demonstrated similar modus operandi to the killer in California and Washington occurred in Idaho, Utah, and Colorado, luckily missing Nevada. That's because Nevada was too cursed. It wouldn't let that son of a bitch in. God bless my state. In most cases, the victims, who physically resembled each other, were beaten and raped to death, with the killers stripping the bodies and throwing them in canals, streams, or leaving them near embankments. A total of 35 murders were recorded, which, according to this theory, were committed by the same man, but this has not been definitively proven. Subsequently, the list of possible victims included 15-year-old Mary Coppola and 27-year-old Marlene Annabelle, who had arrived in Fort Lauderdale from Pennsylvania on October 17, 1975, renting out a room for a 1-week stay at Lauderdale Beach Club. Her body, strangled with a rope, was found by a motorcyclist 9 days later in a dump outside the city. The 12th and final supposed victims was 17-year-old Michelle Winters, whose body was found floating in the Snapper Creek in Pahrumbucky Pines, January 11th, 1976. She was last seen in early January in Fort Lauderdale, with friends of the deceased claiming she had been depressed and planned to enlist in the Navy. Bad move. Depression and the U.S. military does not mix. Winter's mother told the police her daughter had likely voluntarily entered her killer's car, as she often preferred to hitchhike. Mind you, this was before hitchhiking was
A great way to get killed.
It's also been suggested that notorious serial killer Ted Bundy could have been the culprit, but so far no evidence has been recorded of him being present in Florida in this period, and people need to stop dick riding Ted Bundy. As a matter of fact, no one should even know his name. To this day, all of the murders in this case remain unsolved. Unbelievable. I would have never known. It's not like I learned about this from the Unsolved True Crimes Iceberg. Finishing off strong, we have San Juan del Sur psychopath. This is the name of a suspected Nicaraguan serial killer allegedly responsible for the deaths of at least one and possibly up to 9 other men in San Juan del Sur, one of the country's most popular tourist centers. Nice. Only one suspect, a German national, was arrested on suspicion, but later cleared from involvement. Between 2000 and 2002, a total of 10 men died in the coastal town under suspicious circumstances, causing the local population to spread rumors of multiple murderers operating in the area. Authorities were called in, but they could only conclusively prove that one of the victims was murdered, while the others, most of whom lacked any external injuries to their bodies, had likely passed away under different circumstances than murder. There was one confirmed murder, Jose Antonio Castillo Torres, 26, and in early March of 2002, the body of Castillo, a local photographer, was found on the road leading to a bar named El Oro, around 200 meters away from his house. Married man, nonetheless, with a 5-month child. Jose had left the house early on the day before his murder, as he had to deliver some photographs, after which he was seen partying in the El Integral. After having a few drinks, he left with promises around 1 o'clock in the morning, riding home on his bike. When examined, it was revealed that he had suffered a fracture on his cranium, coupled with bilateral sinking of the eyes, as well as multiple other fractures on his frontal parietal lobe. Robbery was ruled out as a motive, as his backpack, which contained his 2 cameras and many photographs, was still present at the crime scene. There were the suspected murders of Jose Santos Merlo Acuna, Jose Casimiro Salas Chavez, unidentified, Marcelo Jose Salina, Tranquilo Barbera Jimenez, Mario Antonio Chavez, Sergio Enrique Velasquez, Jose Barbosa Molina, Jesus Bernardo Flores Aguirre, and then the one disproven murder, or I should say murder quotation marks, Manuel Gonzalez. Only one man was ever charged with any of the murders, a German national who allegedly had lived illegally in Managua on an expired visa from January 22, 2001 until April of that same year. He was accused of being responsible for at least 7 of the deaths by the local population. It definitely had nothing to do with the fact he was an outsider. On March 22, 2002, he was arrested by the police. On May 9th, however, he was allowed to walk free, but was required to attend court every Friday. Nice. In an attempt to find evidence, Nicaraguan authorities investigated the suspect's pass through Interpol and sent in some of his belongings for tests, the most notable of which was a book about 2 twin brothers, one of whom would become a psychopath and mafia hitman, which would serve as possible evidence. Wow, that's some American court levels of stupid. That's some Georgia levels of stupid. So, why did this guy commit the crime?
He read a book.
Motive?
Book.
That's not a motive.
No, but he read a book.
In the end, the suspect was only charged with the deaths of Salas and Castillo by the Rivas Department Police. After a few months, he was dismissed by Justice Marianela Paredes on October 9th, citing abandonment of the trial, as none of the prosecuting parties managed to present any substantiated evidence against the accused. My depression is chronic, but these videos are iconic, and we've made it through yet another one. If you've watched all this way, I'd like to take a moment to just thank you. It means a lot to me that people watch these videos and enjoy them. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and do all the outro stuff that I always do every video. If you're new here, go ahead and just subscribe. It's completely free, helps me pursue my dreams, and you can always undo it later if you decide you hate my guts. And until next time, have a great time. Memento Mori.